It's 5:52 a.m. and Patsy Ramsey is on the phone with 911.
Police, what's going on 515th Street? What's going on there, ma'am? We have a kidnapping.
She explains that her 6-year-old daughter, JonBenét Ramsey, is missing and that a ransom note has been left on their staircase. The note is bizarrely long, 3 pages to be precise, and demands $118,000 for JonBenét's safe return. A very specific amount that matches her husband John's work bonus. The Ramsey household, which was decorated for Christmas, quickly becomes a scene of confusion and panic. John Ramsey searches their home while their 9-year-old son Burke remains upstairs. Police arrive quickly, but crucial mistakes are made almost immediately. The house is not secured and friends and neighbours are allowed inside, contaminating the scene and making it nearly impossible to determine what happened that night. The ransom note itself raises so many questions. It is addressed to Mr. Ramsey and claims to be from a foreign faction, warning against contacting authorities or JonBenet would be executed. The tone is strangely theatrical, and the handwriting analysis later rules out John as the author, but Patsy cannot be conclusively excluded. Investigators are baffled by the note's long length and the odd familiarity with the family's financial details. Despite an early morning search of the house, JonBenet's body remains undiscovered until later that afternoon. At 1:05 p.m, John Ramsey, along with friend Fleet White, ventures into the basement at the request of a detective. In a small, rarely used room, John finds JonBenet's lifeless body. She is lying on the floor, partially covered by a blanket. Her wrists are bound with a nylon cord. Duct tape covers her mouth, and a makeshift garrote fashioned from a broken paintbrush handle is tied around her neck. JonBenet had suffered a massive skull fracture, approximately 8.5 inches in length. There are signs of potential SA as well, including abrasions in her private area.
Deputy coroners brought the body of 6-year-old JonBenét Ramsey from her upscale home. Boulder police won't comment on her cause of death, only saying that she wasn't shot or stabbed.
Investigators are left torn between an intruder and potential family involvement. The hours following JonBenet's discovery, the crime scene remained compromised. In the days that follow, suspicion falls heavily on the Ramsey family. This is due to their behaviour and the inconsistencies in their accounts of what happened. The family's decision to hire a lawyer and refuse formal interviews until months later intensifies the public scrutiny.
What Governor Bill Owens said on national television this morning, he said that you were hiding behind your public relations people, your attorneys, and now you are hiding behind easy journalism.
The strange circumstances around the ransom note, the family's unusual behaviour, and the mishandling of the crime scene deepened the mystery around this case. This cemented JonBenet's story as one of the most infamous unsolved cases in the world. Today, we're going to dive into the strange theories and the mysteries about JonBenet's tragic death. Was it Gary Oliva, the disturbed paedophile who lived just blocks away, and also confessed in chilling letters that he killed her by accident? Or maybe the neighbourhood-friendly Santa Claus, Bill McReynolds, who gave JonBenet a card promising a special gift just days before her death, and whose own life was filled with eerie coincidences tied to the case. This is our very first video, and I'd be so grateful if you could join us on this journey. Together, we'll explore the mysteries and theories and stories behind some of the world's most famous cases. Thank you for being here for the start of it all. And if you like it, please click the subscribe button. There are a handful of theories that most people have already heard of before, the ones that have been debated and dissected for years. What we'll do is we'll quickly run through the popular ones and then we'll delve into the more rare theories. And trust me, one of those lesser known theories fully makes sense to me. Some theorists suggest that JonBenet's parents, Patsy and John Ramsey, were involved in their daughter's death, either directly or as part of a cover-up. Early investigations highlighted inconsistencies in their behaviour and their statements. Firstly, the ransom note, which was discovered by Patsy Ramsey, which detailed how they wanted $118,000. This was the exact amount that John, the father, had recently received as a bonus. Detectives argue that the connection was suspicious, as it implied an intimate family knowledge of their finances. The note's language is weirdly elaborate and doesn't feel authentic. Phrases like, "Don't try to grow a brain, John," sound theatrical, and the sheer length of the note is an unusual characteristic for a ransom note. This also raised eyebrows, suggesting that it may have been written in a staged manner. The Ramsey's home became a revolving door for people coming in and out when JonBenet's body was being found. This included friends and family cleaning up areas of the house, and law enforcement failing to treat it as a homicide scene when it first occurred. This led to the compromising of forensic evidence, and the mismanagement likely destroyed any chance of uncovering physical evidence that could have linked the parents, or anyone else for that matter. Fingerprints, fibers, and other forensic clues were compromised as people moved freely around the residence. Without a controlled crime scene, investigators lost the ability to determine who had handled key items, as well as where crucial evidence might have been, or even if the killer left behind trace DNA. This has been highlighted as one of the most significant failures of the investigation. Days after JonBenet's funeral, the Ramseys gave a public interview pleading for help. Their ability to address the media while avoiding detailed cooperation with investigators raised eyebrows. The interview was seen by some as an attempt to control public opinion, as well as diverting attention from their potential involvement. Others interpreted it as actions of grieving parents desperate to find answers and clear their names. JonBenet's 9-year-old brother has also been scrutinised. Some suggest that he might have killed his sister in a sudden outburst, possibly with striking her with a blunt object. Supporters of this theory propose that John and Patsy covered for him in order to protect their only surviving child. There have been some behavioural observations about Burke. Burke has displayed an unusual detachment during some interviews, leading some to suspect some sort of pent-up guilt or trauma. His seemingly emotionless demeanour, however, critics of this argue that his behaviour might have been a coping mechanism. And once again, I agree with this. How would anybody know the correct way to act, especially at age 9? It's not every day your little sister gets murdered. The intruder hypothesis remains one of the most widely discussed alternative explanations for JonBenét Ramsey's murder. This theory suggests that an unknown individual broke into the Ramsey household on the night of December 25, 1996. It suggests they kidnapped JonBenét and subsequently killed her in the basement. A broken window in the basement of the Ramsey home has often been highlighted as a key piece of evidence. It could have been used for a potential entry point for the intruder. Investigators noted that this window could have provided access to the home, however, its condition has raised questions. Dust and cobwebs around the frame remained undisturbed. This leads people to argue that it was unlikely that anyone actually used the window. One of the strongest arguments for the intruder hypothesis comes from physical evidence found at the crime scene. A partial boot print, which did not match any footwear in the Ramsey household, was discovered. It also didn't match any known associates. It was discovered in the basement near JonBenet's body. Additionally, investigators found DNA from an unknown male on JonBenet's underwear. This DNA did not match any family members or close acquaintances. This lends credibility to the idea that an outsider may have been involved. Advancements in genetic genealogy have raised hopes that unidentified DNA could one day lead to an arrest. Despite this, the limited amount of DNA available for testing remains a challenge. The possibility of contamination has also arose. This is once again because the crime scene was not preserved properly. Another theory that supports intruders entering the house is that there was prior burglaries in the neighbourhood. The Ramsey family lived in an affluent neighbourhood that had experienced a number of break-ins in the months leading up to JonBenet's murder. Given the Ramseys' wealth and high-profile lifestyle, theorists believe that they could have been specifically targeted by someone familiar with their home's layout and vulnerabilities. There were also reports of strangers lurking in the vicinity of the Ramsey household. This was also around the time of the murder. However, these sightings remain unverified. Another theory is the Gary Oliva connection. So Gary Oliva was a convicted paedophile and a long-time person of interest in this case. And to be honest, he remains a very chilling figure in my eyes. His disturbing behaviour and proximity to the Ramsey household, repeated confessions of JonBenet's murder have placed him, no doubtly, under scrutiny, though no definitive evidence has ever tied him to the crime. Gary Oliva was living just 10 blocks away from the Ramsey household. He was known for his history of violent and predatory behaviour, as well as having a criminal record that included the attempted strangulation of his own mother and assault of children. He had what can only be described as a fixation with JonBenet. This first surfaced publicly in the year 2000 following an arrest. At that time, police found him in possession of a photo of JonBenet, as well as a poem titled An Ode to JonBenet, also a stun gun. The stun gun is an item which has been theorised by investigators to have been involved in the crime. Oliva has made multiple confessions over the years and repeatedly confessed to JonBenet's murder. He has done so in letters to his former high school classmate Michael Vale. In a series of communications, Oliva claimed that JonBenet's death was accidental. He wrote statements such as, "I never loved anyone like I did JonBenet. Her death was an accident. Her head bashed in half. And I watched her die." He also described JonBenet as having a divine godlike body. and stated that she had removed all evil from him. Michael Vale, alarmed by Oliva's behaviour, reported him to the police on the 27th of December 1996. This was just one day after JonBenet's body was discovered. Vale claimed that Oliva had called him on Christmas night, sobbing and admitting, "I hurt a little girl." Despite this report, authorities did not immediately investigate Oliva further, and Vale's subsequent attempts were met with inaction. Though Oliva's statements have fueled suspicion, physical evidence has not backed up his involvement. DNA found on JonBenet's underwear did not match him. Additionally, the ransom note left on the stairwell did not match his writing. In 2016, Oliva was arrested again for possession of inappropriate child images. At the time, investigators discovered 365 photos related to JonBenet on his devices, including autopsy images. His possession of these materials further underscored his disturbing obsession, though it did not provide a direct link to the murder. He has made several bizarre public statements, including claiming he wanted to build a shrine to JonBenet and how she revealed herself to him after her death. These comments, coupled with his criminal history and proximity to the crime, have kept him in the public eye, and he has remained a suspect. However, police have never been able to connect him to the crime directly. Critics to the intruder theory often point to the lack of forced entry, the ransom note's peculiar phrasing and excessive length, and the apparent staging of the crime scene as evidence against this explanation. Despite this, the intruder hypothesis remains one of the most plausible alternatives to family involvement in JonBenet's murder. The presence of unidentified DNA and unexplained physical evidence continues to fuel speculation. Let me know below what you think about the intruder theory. Now onto the lesser known theories, and one of which is surprisingly plausible and actually makes total sense. So, Bill McReynolds, a local man known for playing Santa Claus, found himself at the centre of suspicion in the JonBenét Ramsey case. Just 2 days before the murder, McReynolds had visited the Ramsey household dressed up as Santa Claus, a tradition which he participated in for 3 years running. During this visit, McReynolds gave JonBenet a card, and this card contained a cryptic message which said as follows: "You will receive a special gift after Christmas." How creepy. This statement, combined with the timing of the visit, raised eyebrows among investigators. Adding to the suspicions was a bizarre coincidence from McReynolds' own life. 22 years before JonBenet's murder, McReynolds' middle daughter had been abducted. Although his daughter was eventually returned unharmed, the parallels between the two incidents cannot be ignored, and it struck some as being too significant to ignore. Additionally, which is where it gets even weirder, his wife, Janet, had written a play about a young girl who gets essayed and murdered in the basement. Just when I thought this theory couldn't get any more bizarre, it really did. The subject matter of the play bore an uncanny resemblance to the circumstances surrounding JonBenet's death. During the investigation, some began to question McReynolds' relationship with JonBenet. He was described as having an unusual fondness for the child beauty star. A prosecutor commented on the suspicion, stating, "Statements like the one in the card led me to believe some sort of suspicion. What was going on between Santa Bill and JonBenet? He is an individual who is involved with her, had an interest in her, was seen with her shortly before the murder." Despite these coincidences, McReynolds cooperated fully with the police investigation. He provided samples for DNA testing and underwent extensive questioning. Ultimately, no physical evidence tied him to the crime. The ransom note, which was a significant piece of evidence in this case, showed no links to McReynolds, and his handwriting was subsequently ruled out. McReynolds himself expressed heartbreak over the accusations and maintained his innocence until his death. He died in 2002, and before he spoke publicly about how deeply the cases affected him, particularly the insinuations about his character. In his own words, he found the scrutiny devastating and unjust. So on to the final theory of this video, and I have to admit it is among the strangest I have read and heard of. Among the many strange theories about JonBenét Ramsey's death is the claim that the child beauty queen never actually died, but instead she grew up to be superstar Katy Perry. This theory was born and popularised on the internet. Of course, I'd expect nothing less, and has captivated conspiracy enthusiasts despite its extreme lack of evidence and its complete implausibility. The theory first gained attention from a now deleted YouTube video. He argued that JonBenet's parents staged her death in order to hide her from the public, grooming her for the entertainment industry. Advocates of this conspiracy theory point to the physical similarities between JonBenet and Katy Perry, particularly their facial features, in which the eyebrows is a key one. Adding to the theory's supposed credibility, some people argue that the lyrics from Katy Perry's memoir are veiled references to her supposed double life. For instance, in her biography, Katy Perry said something quite bizarre. She said, "Not that I was one of those stage kids, there was no JonBenét Ramsey inside of me waiting to burst out." Of all the things she could have compared it to, she compared it to a murdered child. How bizarre. This quote is frequently cited as a clue left by Katy Perry herself, even though the context clearly contradicts such claims. Despite the enthusiasm of its supporters, this theory has been thoroughly debunked. JonBenet's autopsy and the discovery of her body in the basement pretty much sums that one up and can firmly prove her death. Additionally, Katy Perry's childhood and career have been well documented. During the 2017 VMAs, Katy Perry was asked a bizarre question about JonBenét Ramsey. In a pre-taped segment with Billy Eichner, Eichner jokingly said, "Blink twice if you're JonBenét Ramsey."
Blink twice if you're really JonBenet Ramsey.
Wait, no, that is not real.
I knew it. I'm taking it to TMZ.
You need the money or something? I mean, come on.
Eichner continued to joke about selling the information to TMZ, and viewers criticised the segment for being obviously insensitive to JonBenet's tragic death. So out of all the theories, this is probably the least plausible one, but I thought it would be interesting to include it in the video and see what you guys think, so make sure you let me know below. And that wraps up today's video. I just want to say a huge thank you to anybody who has taken the time to watch this video to the end. We've been working on this for a while now, and we're super excited to be able to bring this content to you, and hopefully you enjoyed it. And if you did, please make sure you click the subscribe button, and if you want to be notified, of course, put on the little bell as well. If you have any case suggestions or anything you would like to see on this channel, our ears are wide open, so please drop it in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.